Welcome back, everybody, for the second edition of the Goblins Cave. And today I have with me one of the original masters of the universe, Daniel Ryan Balderas. How you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Doing great. Thanks for being here with us.
My
we
pleasure.
Appreciate it. This is Legacy Week. We need to talk about some legacy, and that's why Ryan is here. I know that recently you played in GP Indianapolis as well.
GP Indianapolis, yes.
So you've got some stories to tell, I'm sure.
Definitely.
But we're going to take a look at some recent results of SCG Birmingham.
All right.
Let's take a look at that.
Okay.
For those of you that were paying any attention to the coverage of that, there was the same deck that met itself in the finals, basically, and two other decks of this same, essentially the same list, showed up in the top 16. So there were four of these decks. Blue-Red Delver.
Blue-Red Delver, no green.
Why did they take out the green?
I don't know. Tarmogoyf is too slow.
Maybe it is. But they replaced the Nimble Mongoose with Delver.
Mm-hmm.
They took out the Goyfs, and they put in more control, more spell pierces. They put in the dazes, the spell pierces, the ponders, just everything to make that Delver flip, it seems.
What about, so how many creatures was it running in total?
There were 15. There were 4 Delvers, 4 Goblin Guides, 4 Snapcasters, and 3 Grim.
3 Lavamancers?
Yeah.
That seems pretty good. I think I tried to do something maybe a couple weeks after Innistrad came out. A buddy of ours had a little local legacy tournament, and I thought to myself, hey, I don't have Tropical Islands. I can't, play Tarmogoyf, so hey, I'll play a red-blue list that's kind of burn-based. Yeah, it definitely seemed really powerful. I think at that time, it was having a lot more trouble with other different, smaller decks in the format, like Tier 2, Tier 3 decks, where you play with your life so much that if they get a more aggressive draw than you, it can come over the top. But I think definitely in a metagame where you have a bunch of people essentially playing the same deck, but slower, like in terms of Rug Delver,
Mm-hmm.
and you have people playing a deck that essentially, instead of playing 3 2s for 3 and 2 2s with haste, 3 2s for 1 and 2 2s with haste for 1, they're playing 1 1s with a tap ability for
Mm-hmm.
1. And I think it just slots in so well against decks like Maverick and like the Taxus deck that it's really, really a different animal to try to stop than a deck where you can play things like Perish, you can play things like Submerge. So,
Grim Lavamancer seems like a house right now in Legacy, with all these popular decks of being Maverick. Now, obviously, it's not the best deck against combo.
yeah,
I mean, it's not the best card, I'm sorry, against combo, but against anything running creatures, I mean, everybody's creatures are small, very mana efficient, and Grim Lavamancer picks them all off.
yeah, definitely. And like I said, I think that was definitely a very good meta call because you have the majority of the decks that are in the top 8 are creature-based decks. So here's this really efficient creature, costs 1 mana. It does things like the fuel that it needs is you putting cards in your graveyard, which if you're playing a Delver deck, you're doing a lot of. There's a lot of instants and sorceries, fetches, brainstorms, all of that. So it's constantly getting fuel. And one thing that's really great is you can use it, even if you're using it and a lightning bolt to take out a Knight of the Reliquary, you're still doing that before the Knight gets active.
Mm-hmm.
If you have your bolt or your Chain Lightning, you can take out their Mother of Runes, and then it's basically going to take over the game against a lot of those decks. So I think it seems really well positioned right now. Like you said, it's kind of soft against combo, but right now there's not that many people playing combo. Like you have maybe 15 to 20% of the metagame shows up with combo, and a lot of times, unless it's a deck like Storm, you're in a pretty good position to race their combo. Something like Dream Halls, you like sneak attack, stuff like that.
Right.
You have ways to interact with them. You have counters, you have force, and you have daze or spell pierce. So you can really do a lot to get in the way of that. Whereas when you're playing against a Storm deck, if you don't have that combo in your hand and they have their ad nauseum, or I'm sorry, that combo stopper in your hand and they have the ad nauseum, there's not a lot you can do. But I think right now there's much more slower combo decks playing in Legacy, and Red Blue Delver seems like it's more than fast enough to beat those decks.
Oh yeah, it's definitely fast enough. The Lavamancer is easily boarded out too.
Yeah.
You go up against like High Tide or Hive Mind or Dream Halls or something like that, and out 3 Lavamancers and in 3 counter spells. Maybe your 4th Force of Will, maybe another Spell Pierce or something along those lines to just try and give you a little bit more of an edge. Maybe like Surgical Extractions or something. Whatever you might need to put you over the top against the combo deck.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know. That deck definitely looks like one that's
Well positioned.
Yeah, definitely well positioned, and at the moment, kind of hard to attack because you're still put under pressure from the Maverick decks, from other decks that are running like Hate Bears and things like that. But you now have what seemingly is a top dog that can just beat you like blazingly fast, and still has enough controlling cards that it can change into that role really easily.
Yeah. It can go from aggro to control and do both at the same time very well. Like a turn 1 Delver, and if it flips on turn 2, that Delver is probably not going to die. I mean, there's enough counter magic, enough controlling elements, and then if that Delver is paired up with a Goblin Guide, or a Snapcaster flashing back something, it can put another deck on a very, very short clock.
Yeah. The way I think of it is if that Delver flips,
and it probably will,
and it will. Let's say you get the turn 1 Delver flip, and you spend your next 2 turns protecting it, so it gets in there for 6. If you can somehow get it to get in there for that 3rd point, so it's 9, you're basically you need to use 3 more spells in your deck to win the game.
Chain Lightning, Snapcaster, Bolt.
Exactly, Price of Progress, any of those things. And so what it does is it allows the deck to trade, cards for damage, but in not the traditional way where like this is a Bolt, it does 3 damage. This is a Lava Spike, it does 3 damage. Instead, what it does is this is whatever you're trying to do to interrupt me. If that's worth a card, okay, I'm stopping it this turn. There's my 3 damage because my Delver's swinging.
Right.
So not only are you using your cards to get damage through, you're also keeping your opponent from doing things. And I think that's what...
Yeah.
I mean, if you play Standard, that's what is so frustrating to play against Delver.
Right. Putting somebody on a clock and then disrupting them.
Yeah.
So they can't do their plan, and they can't stop you from doing yours. Meanwhile, they're just getting beat down. So it seems like one of the top decks, definitely one to pay attention to. And if you don't have any experience playing against that kind of deck, that's definitely one to proxy up and get some experience against it. Because if you go to any sort of Grand Prix, if there's a PTQ that's Legacy, or even one of these local tournaments at like Empire, or
they're about monthly down in Kent at Empire Games. Carl there, he runs monthly, maybe stuff like a Beta, Taiga, or it's usually around $200 for first place, worth of cards. So if you have things like that in your area, also recently I played in a Star City Games Super IQ, and they're similar, where first prize gets up there between $400 to $600. And they usually do a Standard and a Legacy one. So if you're planning on going to something like that, it's definitely worth proxying up the Blue-Red Delver deck, because you will see that deck probably more than any other deck.
Especially since it just took 1st and 2nd place at the latest SCG tournament there. So other than Blue-Red Delver, what are maybe some of your other top decks that you think are good to play right now?
I think I really like it top 8'd recently, and is what seems like a deck that should just dirtle around and not do anything. Nick Fit, classic, a rock deck that is full of answers, but it also has acceleration in it. Veteran Explorer.
Veteran Explorers.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like see that card and they're like, "What?" Like they think, "Oh, you get those lands and your opponent doesn't," and then they read the card again and see like, "Oh, that's totally symmetrical."
Yeah.
Like, how is this going to be good enough? How is this good enough for a format where you can cast a free counter spell or a 5-mana spell that just wins you the game? You know, and but the deck is built with so many ways to sweep the board with stuff like Pernicious Deed, great 1-for-1 answers, great discard, things like Cabal Therapy, Thoughtseize. It's got Green Sun Zenith sometimes. Actually, most of the time it runs Green Sun Zenith, and it has what I think is the best green 2-drop, Scavenging Ooze.
Oh, that card.
It's just
that card is just sick.
Yeah.
It really is.
I mean, I think that's a card you can definitely consider for taking on the Blue-Red Delver deck. Like, because of that card, I know Austin Yost, he was playing a Blue-Red Delver deck. I don't know if he was playing it in Indy or another tournament recently, but I came up and talked to him after his match, and he basically was like, I should have had it. I really should have had it. And I was like, well, what happened? He was like, he basically played one card against me, and it was Scavenging Ooze. Scavenging Ooze, like eating his opponent, his own graveyard, just eating his own creatures that he was making himself discard to gain life and to get big enough to block any of his guys and present a fast enough clock. So
gaining life, putting up a big blocker, and then when it was time, I'm sure he just beat him down with it too after he'd gotten
gigantic, yeah.
Because, I mean, the Blue-Red Delver deck doesn't play Vapor Snag.
Yep.
And there's no swords or paths. The only removal it has is Bolt, Chain Lightning, or Counterspell it.
Yep. And so
once you get like a big Knight of the Reliquary or Scavenging Ooze in this case,
it can be beat.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just too big.
Yeah, so I like that deck a lot. I still think, I'm not sure, I'm kind of on the fence in between the Esper Stoneblade deck, Lingering Souls, like the one Tom Martell used to win,
right.
And Michael Flores, he's kind of like Breakfast Hybrid, which I don't know if you know, but it's a combo of Cephalid Breakfast, to where basically you have things that target your creature, and when he's targeted, you mill 3, right?
The Encores.
Yes.
Encores.
The Encores, they target him. You have Shuko, which targets him. The Cephalid, his name's escaping me right now. But it plays Aether Vial, so you can bring your combo into play at its speed. But also, you take the combo package of about, I want to say, 10, maybe 8 to 10 cards that are that combo that kill you, and you insert that into the Esper Stoneblade shell. So you're still playing with Lingering Souls, which I think everybody can pretty much agree is the most powerful card to come out of the last set, Dark Ascension. So you still use that. You have great defense that provides. Also can provide you with a really quick clock. Say you draw your Jitte, you play turn 2 Jitte, turn 3 you make some spirits, you equip them, and that's all you need to do for the rest of the game. It's got Stoneforge to find the Shuko as well as the Jitte, like I said. So it kind of can play both of those roles. It's not the best, definitely not the best Stoneblade deck, or is it the best Breakfast deck? But it kind of, by being able to do either of those, it wins a lot of matches that the other deck wouldn't win.
Because the other deck's bringing in potentially the wrong answers.
Exactly.
It's got to be ready to beat 2 different kinds of decks. That is in one deck, and they may bring in a whole bunch of anti-combo stuff, and then they lose to the Stoneblade part of the deck.
Yeah.
Or they bring in Stoneblade stuff, and then lose to the Cephalid Breakfast combo.
Yeah, so it's definitely a very, very powerful deck, and it's one that's also, you're taking 2 pretty hard decks to pilot, and just adding, making it twice as difficult to play correctly. Even, I don't know if this is remarkable or not, but I talked to Mike. He was playing it down in DC, the Star City, not DC, Baltimore, Star City, Baltimore, the Invitational. and he had a game loss for casting Brainstorm, resolving Brainstorm, and then, I don't know if it's that same turn or the next turn, he played a Ponder, and he resolved it the same way as a Brainstorm. So he noticed it as soon as he did it, as soon as he put the cards together and put them back on the library. He called the judge on himself. He got a game loss, and he was like, that's something I've never done in a tournament before, getting that Ponder mixed up with Brainstorm. But in that deck, you're constantly planning for your kill turn, when you're going to go for it, how you're going to sculpt the game to a point that your opponent's just not in a position where they can do anything.
Yeah, he can't stop you.
Yeah, so, but that's definitely, I think, a really good deck. Let's see, anything else that you can think of?
Maverick is obviously...
yeah, Maverick is still good.
And some of them are still splashing red for Punishing Fire, and maybe they'll start splashing red for other things too. Maybe some of these new Avacyn Restored cards. But...
maybe something like Combust. Something like that,
combat these Dover decks.
Yeah, you can... and anything to try to stop that little 3/2 flyer for 1.
Yeah, Combust seems like it might be...
it's a little out there.
Yeah.
It's a little out there, but I think with the way Legacy is going, it's on the part of the cycle where everything resets to be as quick and as efficient as possible. Your smallest converted mana costs. You're just trying to accomplish what you're trying to do faster and more efficiently than your opponent, and then you get these mirrors and things like that where everybody, all of a sudden, you're playing 2 decks against each other. The deck that has the bigger threat is probably going to win. So, and I think the Legacy metagame as a whole kind of moves around that. You have these incredibly fast turn 1, turn 2 combo decks, and if they all of a sudden catch on, you start seeing all of these disruptive controlling decks.
Right.
And to beat those decks, you see really efficient aggro decks like Threshold or Maverick. And I think so it just moves. So sometimes, paying 2 to make sure that you're killing something, maybe it's worth it, maybe not. But
I was recently just messing around on Facebook by posting like a white Legacy white weenie list, just messing around, like base white, but with like Thalias and Meddling Mages as like disruption. After a while, I began to think to myself, Gutshot would be really good in Legacy. Like Gutshot, seriously, would be really good in Legacy right now. It kills, and I made a whole huge list, and I posted it on Facebook in the City of Cleveland Facebook group. But there's a huge list of all these played creatures right now, from Nobles to Lobomancers to Confidants to Snapcasters, Delvers, and Dryads and everything.
yeah,
And they all die to Gutshot. And in a format that is even more about tempo than Standard is, and here you see Gutshot getting played in Standard everywhere.
yeah, and
Gutshot could be really good in Legacy.
I definitely think so. And that was something that right before Grand Prix Indianapolis, Caleb Durward was talking about a lot. I can't remember. It was on a podcast, and they were talking about just the upcoming metagame and things like that. And he was toying around playing a Bant list and playing, 4 Snapcasters in that Bant list, still kind of a Noble Hierarch, that kind of Bant list with, I don't know if he had Green Suns or not, but in that deck playing 3 Gutshots.
Wow.
Because it's so good on turn on your opponent's turn 1.
Right.
Basically, because this is also a time that you saw Welder getting bigger and bigger, and having an answer for that before they can drop down a Chalice or something like that is really huge. So I definitely think in the deck that's playing Snapcaster right now, Gutshot you might want to run a mix of Gutshot and other removal spells, because it's just so good to be able to use it turn 0, flash it back at the end of their turn if you're not doing anything else with that mana.
Just imagine the situation where you're in a mirror or close to a mirror. Alright, let's just say you and your opponent are both playing Nobles, Mother of Runes.
Yeah.
And your opponent goes turn 1 Noble. You EOT Gutshot it and play your own Noble. I mean, look at the swing and tempo. It's almost like as if you went first that match.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Or they go Mother of Ruins, and you gut shot it before it can protect anything or do anything, and you did it at no loss of tempo.
None. And the 2 life, which when you're playing a mirror like that, the 2 life is basically negligible because it's all about whose creature's going to stick, like whose giant guy, whether it's a Tarmogoyf, whether it's a Scavenging Ooze or a Knight, like. Or even if it's just Mother of Runes that's alive to protect those other creatures, like that's what it comes down to. So you're more than willing to pay the 2 life.
Especially if the gut shot is literally out of nowhere. Let's just say you attack with a Scavenging Ooze, they block with their Mother of Runes, give it pro green, then all of a sudden you're just like gut shot.
It's an instant. You can do that. That's crazy. That isn't even something I thought about because part of what I was like considering when I was thinking about that card was that. You're going to hate to draw it later in the game, but in situations like you just described, that seems like a perfect way to use it. So.
Yeah, or they go to equip their noble, or they go to equip their mother, let's just say, and swing with it, whatever it is, in response to the exalted trigger, pop.
Yeah.
Or something, or, it just seemed like it could be really good.
Definitely. I definitely think that Gutshot could have a really good place. I think the other deck that I did want to touch on would probably be the deck I'm currently playing, and I really enjoy, Dredge.
Yeah.
Lion's Eye Diamond Dredge. It's... I don't know.
Really good.
It's very good, it's very powerful, and it seems like it's... The hate, like... It seems like the hate is just... If you get that hate card, you can stop it, but... After playing the deck in a few big tournaments now, like playing about, I don't know, maybe something like 40 or so tournament matches with it, I won so many times when my opponent resolved multiple hate spells. And it just has a resiliency and just the power level of having a Golgari Grave Troll in your graveyard is just nuts with that deck. It's it's figuratively like you get to cast a spell that lets you loot for 6, except you only have to discard 4 of them. So you get to keep 2 cards, and you just get to do that for free every turn. Mm-hmm. So having that kind of card selection, I say card selection, it's kind of like pseudo card selection because it's coming out of your graveyard, but having that card access is just so powerful, and you have so many ways with Faithless Looting, Careful Study, Breakthrough, and Cephalid Coliseum to turbocharge all of those things. Instead of just getting that one card selection of 6 cards, you get to do that 3 times a turn or 4 times a turn, and that basically just is incredibly powerful. Multiple times at Grand Prix Indiana or Indianapolis, I was playing and I had all of my bridges removed from the game. A lot of times what would happen is I wouldn't see one for a little while, and then I'd do a turn where I milled, 18 or so cards, and they would all go into the graveyard. And then my opponent would animate his Mishra's Factory and wasteland it. So all of a sudden, my ability to get zombies is just gone.
Right.
So at that point, I need to play, Icarids, hard cast Narcomoebas, hard cast Golgari Grave Trolls, and just try to grind my opponent out. And there alone, I won 3 game 1s with 0 cards in my library and no zombie tokens in play because all my bridges had been removed. Including a game against Dan Musser, who is a local guy. I think he just won a pretty big standard tournament last weekend for a few $100s. He's probably one of the best legacy players in the Cleveland area. He's actually down out of Akron, Kent area, but he plays up here from time to time. He was playing a zoo deck, which...
Dan playing zoo?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't believe it.
But, and he did a similar thing where he, I think, bolted a a Curd or something like that.
Just to kill your bridges.
Because all my bridges happened to go into the graveyard in the same turn, so they were gone, and basically throwing out guys to get in front of his. I managed to be able to start hard casting Stinkweed, which Tarmogoyf's not getting through, so it and I had him for lethal on my very last turn when I had 0 cards in my library. And the deck's ability to do that is just awesome. Also in that same tournament, I won a game 1 on turn 1 against I'm not even sure which deck it was because I don't know if he stuck.
See a card.
Yeah, no. I really don't know if he stuck around to play the next game. He was very upset by the fact that I went off game 1. Yeah, so it's a really strong deck. So I think it's definitely still a really good call. Practice a lot. I ended up getting 3 missed trigger warnings in that tournament, and that's how I missed day 2. Well, you told an interesting story, didn't you, about you found this other dredge player who actually had place cards for all of his triggers. What's that? What was that about? he had tokens made, like literally, like have a zombie token or whatever, and a lot of people have like special altered tokens and different things that they do to represent what traditionally tokens. But he actually had tokens made that were trigger tokens.
Trigger tokens.
Yeah, so bridge from below trigger tokens. So whenever he would do an ability or do something that would activate bridge, he would literally take from his thing next to his deck, put this token out, the same way if you're casting a spell and you put it out to show that it's on the stack, he would do that to remind himself not to miss those triggers.
And you can see the whole stack, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
All laid out before you, so you're not going to get the missed triggers, and you see exactly what you've got coming, and how many times you're going to get to dredge based off of whatever. And so, yeah, it seems like a really good idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think that tournament taught me a lot about bookkeeping in general when you're playing a game. For a lot of... I hadn't really played in too many big legacy tournaments before that time, and in a standard tournament, I'll keep notes. I'll write down, life changes, cards I see from their hand, lands they play, different things to kind of just get my brain working on what their next play might be. Right. But in Legacy, because there are just tens of thousands of cards and millions of interactions between all of those different cards, you can't keep it in your head. Like I don't think there is a single player I've ever seen win a Legacy tournament who wasn't writing down things. And so having a way to keep track of that is definitely very valuable.
It's so valuable, and Legacy, obviously, especially when you're playing a combo deck like Dredge where there's a billion triggers and you have to keep track of them all. But I'd really like to see more players doing it in Standard, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, there's too many times when you sit down from your opponent and they don't even have a dice to keep track of their life or something.
Wait, now, are you talking about our game where I wasn't keeping track?
No, I'm just saying, like, too many times you sit down and somebody's got a ratchet bomb, or maybe even a planeswalker, and they don't have any way to keep track of it themselves. They got to borrow dice from over here. And I understand it's a very casual setting, one of these local tournaments, like an FNM or something, and I love the casualness of it. But remember, and this was what I talked about with John last time. It's a training ground. It's preparation for when you do take a step up and play in a PTQ or an SCG or whatever it is going to be. If you don't start training yourself now to start keeping track of everything and using your notepad, using your life pad, using dice, using real tokens, not just a dice, but you gotta train yourself.
Yeah, and I definitely think that for me, like going to some big events last summer, really, really got that worked into me. And I saw the way people play at a Grand Prix, and you see the winners, they all kind of look the same. They all kind of do the same things with their cards. They spend the same amount of time thinking about whatever card they draw, whether it's a land or it's like the top deck one of that they need to win the game, when they draw it and when they look at it and when they're thinking about it, it looks exactly the same as when they draw a land. It looks exactly the same as when they draw
poker
a spell.
face.
Yeah, poker face. And it's not even necessarily poker face because a lot of people are still emotive, but it's just being consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because you can show excitement or...
Yeah, I ripped my 5th land in a row.
Yeah, exactly.
Or did I draw the counter spell for your Titan that you're going to try to cast next turn, you know?
Well, it depends on if your name's Jason Kornfeld or not. Because if it's Kornfeld, you probably drew a land. But but getting in those habits of doing that just makes you such a better Magic player. And if you're going to casual tournaments, or not necessarily casual tournaments, if you're going to local tournaments where you're paying $5, you're playing for store credit, if you just continue to approach those the same way, you're never going to get better than that. Like, you might be able to win, and even if you're winning consistently, you're going to be stuck at this level if you're not pushing yourself to play tighter, to keep better track of your things.
Yep.
And also, it's a very good place to learn clock management, because that's the number one problem when I see people playing in big tournaments for the first time. Like, especially if you're... Yeah, they go to time, and they don't understand their responsibility for controlling their opponent's pace of play.
Or they blame it all on their opponent.
Exactly.
But you can prod your opponent. You can always say, please play faster, we're running low on time. Call a judge over and just say,
always.
I feel like maybe there's some slow play going. Can you watch for slow play? You know. And maybe this is a topic for a whole nother show.
Definitely.
But I mean, creating the habits. Creating good, positive, winning habits.
Yeah.
I mean, too many times playing Magic around the kitchen table, it's fun, but you make a lot of bad habits that way too. And sometimes playing too casual in some of these FNMs and whatnot, you know, local tournaments, you play too casual where you're asking for takebacks and I missed my trigger, you know. You gotta be in the mindset where you're saying, look, I want to reach the next level. I've got to do this for myself. Nobody's going to make me play tighter.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got to play tighter if I want to start top 8ing, or I want to win. I want to go to Honolulu
or Barcelona,
you know, or Seattle that's coming up here.
Yeah, I guess one last caveat to that is, some of you are lucky enough to have friends who do those things, who play in those big events, and yeah. I could definitely. I mean, the match before I got those losses, before I got the game loss, there was that match against Dan, and he told me, like, you need to play tighter, you need to keep track of your triggers, and when you play with enough good people who respect you or who like you, like they'll help prod you to that, but even if they're standing over your shoulder, they can't go to your life pad and write down stuff. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's going to conclude it for our talk on legacy and self-improvement and self-motivation about Magic. All this talk...
how about... I have an idea, because I know you wanted to talk about the cards, but I don't know that we have time.
We don't.
Why don't we just do a little fire starter? Let's just quick picks for cards that'll make an impact in Legacy out of Absent Restored.
Vexing Devil.
Of course.
Vexing Devil.
I don't know what to say about that yet. I'm not sure.
Do you have your playset pre-ordered?
No. No, I don't. I don't know. I'm gonna be looking for them for you. So.
Well, if you ever need to borrow them, just let me know.
All right. I know you've got the...
I'll probably be playing them, but if I'm not playing them, I will lend them to you. Gristlebrand, obviously.
Yep, Gristlebrand. He could get there, he couldn't. I don't know. I think a lot of that just has to do with trying them out. The same thing with Avacyn. Yeah. Any sort of big fatty that could go into a Reanimator style could be really powerful. It could... Neither of those creatures... really... Avacyn doesn't have hexproof, right?
No, but she is indestructible.
She's indestructible, but in Legacy, you're not doing a lot of destructing. Exactly. So, yeah.
Go plant some corn.
Exactly, yeah. So it's yet to be seen whether or not that is good. With Gristlebrand, you already have Jin-Gitaxias, who
Right.
draws you 7 cards as well.
And it's blue. So
And
you
it's
can
blue.
force of will it.
So, like, we learned, as with all the discussion of, what's it, Temporal Mastery? Is that the card? Yeah, it's blue, so that means it can pitch to Force of Will, which, that's another card. I first saw it and thought, this is way too broken.
Mm-hmm.
This can't exist in Legacy. It'll be banned. But then I started thinking that, in a lot of ways, it's just like even if you set it up right, it's kind of like a blue Explorer. Where you're...
I'm not a big fan of it, but I see exactly what you're saying. Just a blue Explorer. Yep.
Yep, because if you're doing it on turn 2, unless you got that Delver down turn 1 and it's flipped, if it's not flipped, then you get another chance to flip it for your things. But other than that, you're drawing a card, you're putting a land down.
But the thing about Temporal Mastery, you can't even use it turn 2. Because you go land, Delver, look, it's your Temporal Mastery, but you've only got 1 land in play.
That's true.
So you've got to play another land,
Mm-hmm.
go, and the soonest you can use it is at the beginning of your 3rd turn.
Yep, and...
So it's like, hopefully by then your Delver's flipped, but so you can get in that extra 3 and make it better than just an Explorer, but...
Yeah, so I think time will tell whether or not those cards will be.
Yeah.
I don't think anything else jumped out at me so far, but I did not spend a very long time. Cavern of Souls, I don't know where that's at, Legacy. Because I think in Legacy right now, what are the counters that you're playing against? You're playing against Force of Will, which most creatures...
Spell Snare.
Spell Snare, that's where it could become really good, but what are you going to do? You're going to play Cavern of Souls Lurgoyf? Like... is that... And then, so you're going to be able to tap it. Your guy's going to resolve, but what are you going to do against the swords if they have that? I think that right now, in Legacy, answers come from cards and different spells you can do, rather than just counters. So I don't know exactly how much of an impact that's going to have.
I like calling Wizard.
Yeah.
Because then your Snapcasters and Vendilion clicks can't be countered. And those are going to have an impact, even if they get swords.
They have a comes into play ability.
Right.
So there you go, yeah.
So that seems good. And then, if you're playing with that, I can't even remember the name of the land, that bounces a wizard to your hand.
Oh, Riptide Lab.
Yeah, if you're playing that, then...
Yeah, so maybe there's a new blue-white wizard deck on the way. I think that could use it. I think in any of the decks that we have right now, I think all the creatures are costed in such a way that... Like, if they're Force of Willing it, you're fine. You're happy with that. If they're Spell Snaring it, you feel bad, but there's such a diversity that I don't think it's necessarily where you want to be going with it, because it does only tap for colorless if it's not that.
Well, even in the blue-red Delver deck, let's just say, and you play Cavern turn 1, naming human, your Grim Lavamancer, your Delver, and your Snapcaster, which are the 3 creatures you're playing, except for Goblin Guide,
Yep.
now cannot be counterspelled, and you can play them all off the same land.
So what you're saying is you should, instead of playing Goblin Guide, play Champion of the Parish.
Who knows? Alright, it's time to play. We gotta play some cards.
Yes,
so,
definitely. Let's get
what are you
going.
going to be playing today?
Dredge. I'm going to be playing Dredge. List I've been working on a little bit. Not too many tweaks to it. I really like the deck. Yeah, it's fast. It's strong.
And I told you what 2 decks I had thrown together right now. I have Blue-White Stoneblade and Burn.
Wait, you play Burn now?
Well, and I let you choose which one you wanted to face and you want me to play.
Let's try Stoneblade. I think that'll be more interesting than the Burn
Stoneblade it
matchup.
is.
Alright.
Let's do it.
Okay.